Ever wonder what it looks like when a league decides it's done playing nice, done waiting, and done pretending that patience is a virtue? Because that moment has arrived in the WNBA, and it didn't come with a dramatic lockout announcement or a fiery press conference. It came quietly, wrapped in legal language, status quo rules, and one deceptively simple directive: send the free agency offers anyway. That single decision has shifted the entire balance of power, and suddenly this isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about leverage, survival, and how quickly principles get tested when real money shows up on the table. For months, the conversation around the WNBA's collective bargaining agreement has felt like a slow-moving standoff. On one side, the players' union pushing for higher pay, greater revenue sharing, and long-term protections. On the other, ownership insisting on sustainability, structure, and a path that doesn't burn the whole house down just to prove a point. Publicly, it's been framed as a philosophical disagreement about value and fairness. Privately, it's always been about timing and control. And now, timing is exactly where ownership has chosen to apply pressure. Instead of locking the doors and freezing operations, the league chose the status quo route. No lockout, no shutdown, no dramatic pause. Just business as usual under existing labor law. That distinction matters, because under the status quo, certain mechanisms are allowed to continue even without a new CBA in place. One of those mechanisms just happens to be free agency qualifying offers. And when the league reportedly told teams they were free to send those offers out despite the uncertainty, it was the clearest signal yet that ownership had stopped negotiating in theory and started negotiating in reality. This is where things get uncomfortable, especially for anyone who thought unity alone would carry the day. It's easy to hold a hard line when everything lives in statements, social media posts, and abstract future gains. It's a lot harder when actual numbers hit actual inboxes. When a player who's been scraping by on a modest salary suddenly sees an offer that could change her financial life, the conversation shifts immediately. Not because she's weak, not because she's disloyal, but because she's human. That's the part that gets glossed over in so many of these debates. The WNBA isn't a league made up entirely of stars with massive endorsement deals and international paydays. There are plenty of players who've been grinding for years, living season to season, knowing that one injury or one missed opportunity could end everything. For those players, a qualifying offer isn't symbolic. It's tangible security. It's rent paid, bills covered, and a future that doesn't feel quite so fragile. When those offers start circulating, solidarity becomes a much more complicated concept. Ownership understands this dynamic better than anyone. They didn't need to threaten a lockout or posture publicly, because they know incentives do the work for them. By letting free agency proceed under existing rules, they've created a scenario where the union is forced to argue against opportunity while ownership quietly presents it. That imbalance alone is powerful. One side is talking about long-term ideals and collective goals. The other is letting players run the math. And math never loses. What makes this move feel especially calculated is how understated it is. There's no villain monologue here, no dramatic escalation. Just a reminder that the system doesn't stop functioning because negotiations get tense. Contracts still exist. Calendars still matter. Arenas still need dates locked in. And those arenas, by the way, aren't sitting around waiting for labor disputes to resolve themselves. They host concerts, conventions, and every other event that shows up with a check and no drama attached. Once those dates are gone, they don't magically reappear just because everyone decides to be reasonable later. That's the part of this story that doesn't get nearly enough attention. A season without locked-in dates isn't really a season. Every delay makes logistics harder, costs higher, and uncertainty deeper. Ownership knows that time isn't neutral in negotiations like this. Every passing day quietly shifts leverage. Careers don't pause. Bills don't pause. And momentum, once lost, is incredibly hard to rebuild. The irony is that all of this is happening at a moment when the league had real momentum. Increased visibility, new fans, and stars who were finally breaking through to mainstream attention. Instead of protecting that momentum, the public narrative has been dominated by dysfunction and infighting. New viewers didn't show up to learn about labor law or bargaining tactics. They showed up for basketball, storylines, and growth. When everything starts to feel like it's always on the verge of collapse, enthusiasm fades quietly. And when it goes, it rarely comes back at the same intensity. That's why this free agency decision feels less like aggression and more like a wake-up call. Ownership didn't need to say a word about dominance. They just let the rules speak. Under labor law, when an agreement expires, certain processes can continue unless both sides explicitly agree to freeze them. Free agency qualifying offers fall squarely into that category. It's boring paperwork on the surface, but strategically, it's devastating. Because it shifts the conversation from what should happen to what is happening. The union's response has been predictable, dismissing the significance of free agency activity without a new agreement in place. On paper, that stance makes sense. In practice, it ignores how people actually behave when faced with real opportunities. You can call it meaningless all you want, but that doesn't stop players from evaluating offers, imagining different futures, and asking themselves what waiting is actually costing them. Once those questions start, there's no going back to pure abstraction. The situation gets even more complex when you consider players who are right on the edge of major salary increases under the frameworks being discussed. Even if those exact numbers aren't finalized, just knowing that kind of money could be within reach changes expectations. Waiting stops feeling strategic and starts feeling punitive. Urgency replaces posturing, and suddenly there's pressure from within to find resolution instead of escalation. This is where individual circumstances begin to matter more than collective messaging. A qualifying offer from a high-profile franchise isn't just a contract. It's exposure, relevance, and a chance to build a brand. Players watch teammates land in the right situations and see their profiles explode. That kind of example has a way of rearranging priorities very quickly. At that point, delaying free agency doesn't feel like principle. It feels like self-sabotage. Even the league's biggest stars aren't immune to this tension. Players like Caitlin Clark have openly acknowledged the bind they're in, understanding the push for better pay while also recognizing that the game itself needs to be played. Being caught between a rock and a hard place isn't a soundbite. It's a lived reality. Careers are short. Windows close fast. And the idea of losing an entire season isn't some abstract threat. It's a tangible risk with long-term consequences. From a business perspective, the whole situation borders on tragic irony. The push for maximum control and top-dollar compensation is threatening the very platform that makes either one possible. Growth can't survive constant chaos. Fans don't stick around when everything feels unstable. Momentum is delicate, and breaking it is far easier than rebuilding it. Ownership's move to proceed quietly within the rules highlights that reality without ever needing to say it out loud. What's especially telling is how little effort it took to alter the dynamics. No ultimatums. No public shaming. Just a gentle reminder that the machine keeps moving whether everyone agrees or not. That understanding forces a reckoning, because fighting reality is exhausting. Eventually, exhaustion wins. As qualifying offers start circulating, the narrative inevitably shifts from group demands to personal choices. That shift alone undermines any attempt to keep everyone perfectly aligned. Not because players are betraying each other, but because they're weighing real trade-offs. Each additional day without resolution nudges leverage away from collective ideals and toward individual calculations. It happens organically, almost politely, as players start asking themselves what all this waiting is really worth. Time, after all, is the one thing neither side can control. Negotiations don't exist in a vacuum. Entertainment options don't stop. Arena calendars don't pause. Fans don't wait forever. Ownership knows this, which is why their decision feels so deliberate. They didn't need fireworks to make their point. They just needed patience and a firm grasp of how incentives work. In the end, this moment serves as a reminder that power moves don't always look loud or dramatic. Sometimes they show up quietly, wrapped in existing rules, and let human nature do the rest. Money, opportunity, and timing have a way of forcing conversations between ideals and reality. By letting